Okay, we are live.
We're live.
So let's make sure we watch what we say. Okay, whoever is watching, that's probably. If you could just text me to make sure that I can be heard. We got a comment last time that the angle wasn't good, so this is why we thank the Sovins for the tissue box. They have everything. Welcome to whoever just joined. Feel free to leave a comment on the bottom for whoever's watching. How's everyone doing? Everyone doing okay? Yeah? Okay. Thank you all for coming. This is very exciting.
We'll come live next time.
Okay, next for whoever's watching, we'll show you the snacks. So next time, you're welcome to join us in person.
Do you deliver?
Okay.
I like that book.
You do that.
Okay, do you want to pass these out?
Is it gonna fall off or should we just this?
Oh, I meant to. Do you have a phone on you?
You did that.
Do you have a? Can we record? Do you mind recording? Do you have enough space for that?
No, but let's see what we can do with that. Let's see.
All right.
Program's going to use that to record it on just a voice.
You should have a voice recorder.
Voice
Yeah,
recorder.
you could delete it right after. Just email us. Okay. Could you just save me one, if that's okay?
Get your transfer.
What? Take a transfer. Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming. It's so nice to spend time together. Oh, we'll wait for. I think I'll show you.
Howard Schulder wants your cell number on this.
What is it?
Howard Schulder.
Did you get my text? Is Howard watching?
Yes, it's real good.
Okay.
And
Howard, is the angle good?
he wants your
Great.
cell number.
I heard you're going to be hosting next week. Are we on?
Are we
are-
doing next week?
if
What's your cell
I was going to do something about Hanukkah. If people are up for that, no pressure. Okay, we'll discuss it. We'll discuss
It's a
after.
hard night.
Okay.
So it's-
Right, that's why. Okay, fine.
What's your cell number?
718-619-7729. Here we go.
What's the sugar? What's the sugar? 20? You sure I can take out?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Rita, sure.
Okay.
I don't charge it.
Everybody ready?
Yes, please.
We
Sorry.
did? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for the Sobins for hosting again, and again for your tissue box and your mini stender.
We have a real one.
Yeah, this is great. Okay, our learning tonight should be in the merit B'schudei Refuah Shlema for all those in our community who need a Refuah Shlema. We all know who they are. So with that in mind, we will start. So Mazel Tov, we had a child last week. A baby was born. We discussed life before birth. And now we are going to discuss the rituals of life after birth. So what are some of the things that go on? What are some of the things that come to mind when you think of life after birth?
Bris.
Think of a bris, okay. Baby naming, okay.
Simchat bat.
Simchat bat, okay. Great. Anything else?
Shalom
Shalom Zacher. Okay. Great. Beautiful. So there are many things to discuss. So what I would like to do tonight, I don't know if we'll get so much into baby naming, although that is definitely important. Maybe next time we could do that. So I'll focus on a few of the brachos that are to be said by the parents. So after a child is born, so the halacha is. So let's give an overview of what we're going to do. First, we'll discuss the brachos. We'll discuss the shalom zachar. We'll discuss a little bit about bris milah. Some of the questions about bris milah that come up that are discussed, and why the significance of the eighth night, of the eighth day, why bris milah is after 8 days, what bris milah is all about. We'll discuss some of the halachos of the bris milah, and also what about girls? Why are the females left out of this seemingly very important mitzvah, as we will see, or are they left out? So we will hopefully see about that. Okay, so Mazel tov again. We had a baby boy. Now, what does a parent do once they have a baby boy or a baby girl? Anyone know from experience?
Start saving for college.
Start saving for college.
We're not smoking.
Very good.
Stop sleeping.
Stop sleeping. Okay. Very good. So some of
You
the
call the person that you ordered the layette with.
okay. So from the halachic standpoint, so one of the first things that a parent is supposed to do is actually to say a bracha, to give thanks to Hashem. Actually, the truth is, probably after the bracha, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, the halacha was that a mother was supposed to bring a karban chatas, actually, a karban chatas, which is very interesting. A karban chatas is a karban that you would bring after having sinned. The question is why a mother who didn't do anything wrong by having a baby would bring a karban chatas. So the Gemara actually explains that this is because we know that for many, I've never experienced it, but bearing a child or giving birth to a child could be a little painful, and so perhaps the mother said something wrong while she was giving birth back in the days where they didn't have any epidurals. So just in case, so they bring a karban chatas. That is one of the reasons that is given. But nowadays we don't have that karban. We hope to get back to those days sometime soon, hopefully. But there are brachos to be said by the parents. What are those brachos? So number one, the halacha is for if you give birth to a boy, the bracha to be said is hatov v'hamitiv. Hatov v'hamitiv, giving thanks to Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, you do good things and you continue to bring good things upon us. And the bracha for a girl is actually not hatov v'hamitiv, but is shehechayanu. Why the difference between the two? Between a boy and a girl, any ideas? So this actually goes back to a halachic concept, and that is that when there are multiple beneficiaries of a good thing that is provided, so the bracha is hatov v'hamitiv. So for example, you buy a new car for your family, so what bracha would you say? Would you say shehechayanu or would you say hatov v'hamitiv? So it depends who's the answer is it depends who's using the car. So if it's for you and your family, if there are multiple beneficiaries of this car, so the bracha would be hatov v'hamitiv. As opposed to if you buy a new suit for yourself, you buy a new car, and you're going to be the only one using it, so the bracha is shehechayanu. So the halacha is that technically, if a girl goes out and gets married, so she's no longer going to be around. She's going to be around her husband more, and she's not going to be tending to her parents' needs. This was back in the day. So because the parents wouldn't be benefiting from the kavod of the daughter, so they'd only say shehechayanu. There aren't multiple beneficiaries. The daughter is not providing back for the parents, but a son who technically is obligated in the kibud avaim, in honoring his parents and providing for them when the parents get old. So that is why they say hatov v'hamitiv. Nowadays it is discussed, perhaps, if anything, it's the opposite, right? So
When are these brachos supposed to be made?
Very good. So these brachos should be made as soon as possible once the room is clean, once the mother is cleaned up after the birth. So as long as you're in a clean environment, so they should be said right away. As long as you're still feeling the simcha of the newborn child. So we have these two brachos. It's based on a technicality. So there is discussion of whether we should say hatov v'hamitiv for a girl nowadays also. So in general, we try to not say brachos that we're just not sure of. So we could definitely say shehechayanu. Whether you could say hatov v'hamitiv, there is definitely room to discuss that because society has changed. But we'll leave it at that. These are the two brachos. Number three, third bracha to be said, would be hagomel, the bracha of hagomel on the part of the mother who went through a traumatic experience. She is thankful that she made it out alive, and so she should say hagomel also as soon as possible, up to 30 days afterwards, and if not up to 30 days, technically it could be that you have a year, but it should be said within the context of a minyan. Torah reading, that's when there are many people around. But that is a bracha that should be said. Okay, so these are 3 brachos that are said after a baby is born. Number 2, the Shalom Zachar. So that's a very beautiful minhag. Yeah.
I
Yes.
have another question. And this is not something I've done, but a minhag of hearing Kedusha after a woman gives birth?
Hearing
Hearing
Kedusha.
Kedusha, like coming to shul soon after childbirth, you've never heard
I've
this?
never heard that. Maybe to say come to shul to say Hagoma, but not to hear Kedusha. I've never heard that. Okay, it could be. My ignorance doesn't mean anything. I haven't.
I've heard women
Okay.
do this, so I don't know.
We'll have to look into it if you find anything.
So it wasn't Haggadah? No, it was to hear Kedusha, like coming to shul just to hear Kedusha. And then
Interesting.
So I don't know. If a
And they
Okay.
didn't stick around for the rabbi's drasha.
It's during the week. Jimmy. Very good. Okay, so maybe some women come to shul to hear Kedusha. Sounds like a beautiful thing. Okay, so we move on to the Shalom Zachar. So the Shalom Zachar happens the first Shabbos that the baby is born, right before the bris. So why do we have a Shalom Zachar? Why this minhag? Many people have a custom to have the chickpeas and the beer. So why do we have a Shalom Zachar? Anyone? Any ideas? No. Okay. Has anyone been? Have we all been to a Shalom Zachar? Yeah. Okay. So there are a few reasons given for this minhag. This minhag actually goes back. It seems that this goes back to the times of the Gemara. Right. The Gemara records a story of one Amora going over to a different Amora's house for a Shalom Zachar, and there Tosos on the Gemara calls it a Shavua Haben. A week of a ben, whatever. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but Tosfos on the Gemara, one of the commentaries on the Gemara says that this is called a Yeshua haben. What does Yeshua mean?
Salvation.
Salvation. So we are celebrating that the baby was saved from the womb of the mother. So what that means, I don't know. We could take guesses. So that is one explanation, which is no, that's what the Tosfos says on the Gemara. But there are some other explanations as to why we have a Shalom Zachar. We'll get to when we discuss Bris Milah soon, that one of the purposes of day 8, why Milah is after 8 days, is because if there are 8 days from the time of birth until a Milah, you're guaranteed to have a Shabbos in between. Okay. Also, similarly to a karban. A karban has to be at least 8 days old, because there will always be a Shabbos. It will always greet the Shabbos. So perhaps at a Shalom Zachar, one of the reasons given for a Shalom Zachar is that this is before the Bris Milah, the baby is greeting the Shabbos Malka. This is the baby's first encounter with Kedusha. Maybe this is what you're referring to. Another encounter with Kedusha would be coming to shul and experiencing Kedusha. Does the baby come with the mother? I don't know. Just the mother. Okay, so I don't know. But the Shalom Zachar is a celebration of the baby's first encounter with Kedusha in preparation for his Bris Milah. Okay, another reason given for the Shalom Zachar is that it is actually a time of mourning. What are we mourning? If you remember last 2 weeks ago, we discussed how in the womb there's a lot going on. One of the things that's going on is that the baby is learning all this Torah. The baby is on a spiritual high, and now it is no longer on that level. It gets a tap on the lip, forgets everything that it had learned in the womb. And so the Shalom Zachar is actually mourning, which is why we have chickpeas, which are round. The round is a symbol of mourning. So it could be that it is a time mourning the loss of the Torah that the fetus had lost when it came to when it came into the world. Just some things to think about when we go to our next Shalom Zachar B'Ezrat Hashem. Okay, and then we have the Bris Milah. Okay, so there is a lot to be said about Bris Milah. Bris Milah, as we said, is on the 8th day. So there are two aspects to Bris Milah. There is the Bris, and there is the Milah. So there's actually more than that, but we'll get to that soon. So how do we what does Bris mean, and what does Milah mean? How do we understand these concepts? Let's start with Milah. When we talk about Milah, what does Milah mean?
Procedure.
Right, Milah is the procedure. So what is the not to get too graphic, but what does the procedure consist of at the Bris Milah? Right. So
Somebody's coming.
Oh, good.
Ah,
Oh,
Dr. Biegelman.
Matt, how are you? Alan,
Welcome.
Alan, we have a seat right here.
Yeah, move my chair.
Matt, come on.
So welcome. Here we have. Feel free to. You can pass this down. Okay, continuing right along with, you came right in time to Bris Milah. Were you at this year? I spoke a little bit about Bris Milah on one Shabbos afternoon. I don't think any. Dr. Biegelman, were you here when we spoke about Bris Milah before Mincha on Shabbos on Parshas Lech Lecha?
I was not here, no.
Okay. So if not, it might be a review, but that's okay. Always good to review. So what is the procedure of the bris milah? So we are born with a foreskin. We're born with a foreskin. So the milah is the cutting.
Right.
Half of us. Okay. Us. We. The male beings are born with a foreskin. And so the mitzvah of milah, which was given originally to Avraham Avinu in Parshas Lech Lecha, this is why we discussed that then, is to cut off the milah. So that is part number one. Number two is the priya. It's called the priya. There's a membrane under the foreskin to pull back the priya, and then there's a third part called the metzitza. The metzitza is the most controversial part of the milah. We won't talk about that so much right now. But there's a discussion of whether the metzitza is there, the sucking out part of the blood is there as what Chazal assumed to be a health concern, or whether that is part and parcel of the mitzvah of milah. So that is why we have a huge controversy about whether. So most mohalim do mitzitza nowadays, but do you do it with a straw, or do you have to use does your mouth have to make contact with the blood? So that is a discussion, not for now, but we should just know that there is a discussion out there. Okay, so those are three parts of the mitzvah of milah. So what is milah all about? Why is it that we cut off a part of the male body? Why is that? So would anyone like to read our first source? This is page number 1, source number 1.
Adam was created.
Yeah, great.
Adam was created circumcised, as it says, and God created man in his image.
So this is a very deep insight. We'll get to Rav Tzadok in a minute. But this is quoted from the Avot Rabbi Natan, one of the midrashic sources of Chazal. And they say that Adam Harishon actually did not have this orla. He did not have this foreskin to be cut off. He was created complete. He was created whole. He was created already with his bris milah. So this is how he was created initially. But did that last? That did not last. As you see in the second source, source number 2, the Gemara says in Masechet Sanhedrin, source number 2. Anyone? Can anyone help us?
Want me to read it?
Please,
Okay.
sure.
I don't have my glasses.
That's
You can be
okay.
the official reader.
Adam, Rabbi Yitzchak said, he pulled his foreskin to cover his skin.
So once Adam had sinned, what was the sin? He ate from the tree of knowledge, from the Eitz Hada'as. So the Gemara says that he pulled his foreskin back over his milah. He covered up his milah. So somehow when we perform this bris milah, what we are doing is we are going back to the way that Adam Harishon was created. And this goes hand in hand with the idea that with the bris milah, we are somehow becoming partners with God in his creation. God created a world, but he gave us a world to work with and to develop and to perfect. And we are not created in a perfect way in order so that we can bring ourselves to perfection. So what we are doing when we perform this bris milah is we are going back to the perfection of Adam Harishon, the way Adam was created originally, back in his original image. But even more interesting is that somehow the perfection of Adam is noted as Adam was created b'tselem Elokim, that somehow this perfection is related to Adam being created in God's image. That just as God is perfect, so too Adam was created in a perfect, wholesome way. And once Adam had sinned, so he somehow ruined that perfection. And so the bris milah is going back to this perfection, bringing us back to this tselem Elokim that we are created, the tselem Elokim being created in the image of God. So that is one idea of bris milah. So Rav Tzadok HaKohen actually expands on this idea. Rav Tzadok HaKohen was one of the great Hasidic thinkers. He lived in the 1800s. Would anyone like to read source number 3? Dr. Biegelman? Are you able to?
Want me to read it?
Yeah, please read it out loud.
I have my glasses, it's still hard to read.
Okay, it's too small. I'll have to make it bigger next time. Okay.
God made man upright, and he, Adam, was born circumcised, and had he not transgressed, he and all his descendants would have remained so. But because of his sin, the sages had stated that he pulled his foreskin, for through the defilement of the serpent, his foreskin was extended, with the result that all his descendants were born uncircumcised until Abraham, who was close to completing all the holiness attainable by man. In order to rectify the defilement of Adam, man was instructed to perform bris milah, which removes that defilement. By doing so, he becomes perfect and complete the holiness that he can attain.
So again, this idea of returning back to the wholesomeness of Adam Harishon, this was the mitzvah given to Avraham Avinu. Okay. The Maharal is Rav Yehuda Lo. He is someone who had deep insight into Chazal. He was more of a Kabbalist, but made Kabbalah accessible to the non-Kabbalists among us. So I have a real affinity to learning and studying the Maharal. So he also discusses this idea. Why? So now what he discusses is why. He actually discusses from a different angle. So he says the Adam Nivra Arel, but he's talking that we were created uncircumcised. And Arel, the Arla, is the foreskin. That is the part that we are cutting off. So why is it that we are created with this foreskin? Would anyone else like to read this source? Should I read
Man
it?
is
Yeah,
created
great, thank you.
Man is created uncircumcised. Why is this so? This stems from the purpose of man. Man is created with potential and needs to bring it to actualization. The body should parallel the soul. Just as one soul is created with potential and one needs to actualize it, so too one's body is created with potential. As long as the orla has not been removed, a man cannot attain his potential because the orla is a cover and a blockage for a man, which is the meaning of orla. Every time it opens up, the orla of your hearts from Devorah. And as Moshe was described as, it's hard to read this.
It's Arel Sfatayim.
Thank you.
Okay.
Having a speech impediment means that he cannot bring his words to actualization.
So when we are moving the orla, so what orla means, orla is a cover. Orla is a blockage. So we find this word orla used throughout the Torah to mean not allowing something to be brought to its full potential. So as we read, so Arel, the word Arel is used by Moshe Rabbeinu, who was not able to speak clearly. He was not able to get it, either he stuttered or he had some sort of speech impediment. He was not able to bring his speech into fruition. He was not able to achieve his potential speech. And also we have the mitzvah of Orla. The mitzvah of Orla is, what is the mitzvah of Orla? Anyone? The mitzvah of Orla is in Eretz Yisrael, the first 3 years that fruit grow, so you're not allowed to eat from that tree, from that fruit that grows in Eretz Yisrael. So meaning that fruit is devoted to God, but the fruit has not yet reached its potential. We're waiting to the 4th year there's a cover on it. We're not allowed to touch it. So the fruit has not yet reached its reached its potential. So too the Arla is an expression of man's purpose in this world, that we have potential to achieve, and we have somehow it is covered. It is blocked, and by removing the Arla, we are saying that we need to achieve our potential. This goes back to our discussion last time, that we are all created with a mission. Each and every soul was placed into the world at its proper time, when its mission, when God saw that each soul had a mission to fulfill, and so we have potential. The potential is there, and it's our job to bring it into fruition. So that is a little bit about removing the orla, removing the blockage, or going back, as we said before, to the time of Adam Harishon. Okay, so that is a little bit about the milah. And what about the bris? What does it mean to have a bris? What does the word bris mean? Bris means a covenant. Okay, so what is a covenant? So we go back to the verses in Parshas Lech Lecha. So that is the first covenant between Hashem and Avram Avinu. So I brought the psukim here. They're very beautiful psukim if you read this. And when the bracha that's said before the bris, one of the brachos that is said is Lachniso Bivrito Shel Avraham Avinu. So what we are doing when we perform the bris milah is we are going back. We are saying that we are becoming part of this eternal covenant between God and Abraham and his descendants. So just skim through the psukim here. It's such a beautiful thing. They're so beautiful. Hashem says, I will maintain my covenant between me and you. So we are these doros, we are these generations later, getting back into the bris of Abram. And so Hashem says, Zos brisi asher tishmeru, this pasuk yud, veinu veinechem, you should keep this mitzvah, bein zaracha acharecha, himolachem kol basar. Okay, so this is the mitzvah that is given to Abraham, and we have the opportunity to enter into this covenant between God and man. God says, you do what I give you to do, and I will be there. I will be there for you. This is the covenant between God and Abraham.
Why do we need all the other reasons for the bris milah when the reason is clear cut in Bereshis, that it's the covenant? That is the connection that we have to Hashem.
Right.
Why do we need all these other explanations of why it's necessary? It's not unnecessary.
So
it says in the Torah exactly why it's necessary.
Right. That's an excellent question. So just to reiterate your question, the Torah says the reason is a bris is a bris. A bris is the covenant.
My relationship with you. This is Hashem's connection to the average Jewish person.
Right.
So that is the utmost importance. All these other reasons are really accessory. Once a Jewish man has a bris, he's part of the covenant with Hashem, which no other person can have.
Right. So I think the other reasons are just giving meaning into. We could have created a bris in any other way. Why is it specifically cutting off this part of the body?
Because Hashem says it.
Right. So Hashem says it.
Right.
So this is the bris. But I think the other reasons are giving meaning to why specifically this way. Why specifically this action? But you are a low power. I hope this lasts. Okay.
If you read this, and then you think, how are women brought into the covenant?
Great.
They're not.
So are women not part of the covenant?
Right.
Chas v'shalom. Right. So we're gonna get there. If you want to peek ahead, to we'll get there to page 5. But we'll get there. I hope to get there. We'll get there. Thank you. Excellent question. Thank you. Great questions. I don't know if I answered your question. You're right. The Torah says the reason for the bris, meaning what is a bris about. I think the other reasons are allowing us to understand why a bris is done in this way specifically. But you're right. The Torah does say the reason for the bris.
Very often in Gemara we come to explanations of why something is done, even though it's biblically stated.
Right.
It will often
Right.
say what's the reason, how it's to be done, why it's done.
Right. Exactly. So, and very often there are multiple reasons for something, as Brian said. So there is not just one way to understand. As we, for anyone who was there Friday night, we said Shivim Panim LaTorah. There are 70 faces to the Torah. You could have many ways, many angles, many perspectives on one aspect. So it could be different perspectives speak to different people. But we're trying to present the different perspectives. Try to find the ones that speak to each of us. Okay, so we have the opportunity to enter into this bris, and this actually gets into another important reason for the bris milah, as Dr. Biegelman referenced. The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam Maimonides was one of the great Jewish philosophers. So he writes, and this is number 2 on the, I think I have the same pagination. Source number 2. Can anyone read the Rambam for us in the Moreh Nevuchim, Guide for the Perplexed? Anyone?
Come on, Phyllis.
In my opinion.
Thank you.
There is another very important reason for the mitzvah of milah, namely that there should be a common physical marking on all the men who uphold this faith, acknowledging that there is but one God.
So another important reason that the Rambam writes is that we are having a physical sign that we are becoming a part of this covenant. It's not enough just to believe. It's not just in your hearts, which is what the Christians say. The Christians there is a pasuk that says umaltem es orlas levavchem, that you should circumcise your heart. But it's not just about the heart. That there's something important about having a physical sign, and that we are part of this covenant, and this is something we continue for generations. Every time we circumcise a baby, so we are signifying in a physical way, we are making a physical mark that this baby is becoming part of the covenant. And as we know, this physical sign that we are creating, becoming part of this covenant, has been dangerous, has been contested. This is how Jews have been identified. This is how we identify as Jews, and this is how those around us identify us during the Holocaust. So this is how they were able to identify whether someone was Jewish or not. And so much so that people often try to be Moshech or Lasam. People try to pull back and try to cover up that they were circumcised. And the Greeks, this relates very much to Hanukkah. One of the things that the Greeks tried to stop was bris milah. The Greeks viewed man as being created in a perfect way, but we believe that no, we are created imperfect, and it is our job to perfect the body. So there's this physical sign that represents this covenant. So that is what the Rambam says. And Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, in the next source, brings this all together. Just the idea of covenant. Brian, can you read the next one for us?
Those bound by a covenant voluntarily undertake to share a fate. They choose to link their destinies together. They accept responsibilities to and for one another. Covenants redeem the solitude of the lonely crowd.
Right. So, just expressing a beautiful idea of what a covenant means, what a bris means, is that we are literally giving a part of ourself, becoming part of this eternal covenant. We are saying our destinies are linked. We are walking hand in hand, and Hashem will be there with us, with the Jewish people, forever. So that is the idea of the covenant. I feel like this brings so much more meaning to a bris when you're standing there and
So you pay a price to join the club.
pay a price, a little painful for the baby, but the baby gets over it. They survive. That's right. Okay. So just a little bit about the idea of covenant. So this actually gets into an interesting discussion. Last time we had another discussion between one of the Amoras and a Greek philosopher. So here too, one of the Romans actually. Here too we have a discussion. We'll skip to source number 6. And in source number 6, we have a discussion between Turnusrophos Harasha, he was not a great man, and Rabbi Akiva. So they have a discussion. Whose creations are more beautiful? Are God's creations more beautiful, or are man's creations more beautiful? So what would you say if I were to ask you that question? What would your natural instinct be? God's creation. So that is what Tornus Rufus says. This is the Greek. This was Greek philosophy that God created man wholesome, and don't tamper with the body that God gave you. Why are you circumcising your child? Why are you cutting off a piece of your body? And Rabbi Akiva says no, that man's creations are greater. Why are man's creations greater? Because he says what he did was, if you look down in source number 6, Rabbi Akiva brought him stalks of wheat and baked rolls and said, "These, the stalks, are works of God, and these baked rolls are work of the people." I mean, God created the stalks of wheat, but God didn't create the cookies. He didn't create the popcorn, right? Man is able to take what God gave us and make it even better. So that's why Rabbi Akiva says man's creations are even better. And so Turnus Rufus turns to him and says, "Oh, so if Hashem wants you to be perfect, Hashem wants you to be wholesome, why didn't he just create you with this bris milah? If he desires circumcision, why doesn't the infant emerge from his mother's womb already circumcised?" Which he actually did by Adam Harishon. We discussed this already. What Rabbi Akiva says is, we'll read it in Hebrew. Lefi shelo natan HaKadosh Baruch Hu et hamitzvot liYisrael ela litzaref otam bahem. What does that mean, litzaref? So in the English we wrote, the purpose of the mitzvot is to purify the person. What does this mean? Litzaref is actually, if you is more of a if you take a metal to purify, to put a metal into the oven. So it's a painful process, as we said. Putting the metal into the oven is a painful process, but you put it in the oven and you get rid of all the impurities. And this is the purpose of the mitzvot, that God gave us mitzvot in order to purify ourselves. Yes, and maybe it is a little painful for the baby, he says, but there is a purpose, there is a goal. And as we said, man's actions are even greater than God's, and we have an opportunity to purify ourselves. And this is not only with the mitzvah of milah, this is with every mitzvah. Sometimes, this is an important perspective to take, sometimes it's not so easy to perform a mitzvah, but very often the pain that it takes to perform that mitzvah, that's no pain, no gain. That's what it is all about. And this gets us into the discussion of why 8 days. The number 8, as we discussed before, what is the significance of the number 8? So,
By the way, Rabbi, this concept of pain is one of the big arguing points of people who want to outlaw bris milah. However, the truth of the matter is, the baby has so little consciousness that it really doesn't understand pain well.
Right.
And it's like someone under anesthesia, you make an incision, does the patient have pain? Yes, but his brain doesn't interpret it as pain. So the level of pain that a baby has is not the same.
Right.
Not the same as what an adult would have. So this whole concept that the baby's suffering in any way is absolutely ridiculous.
Right. So I mean, there has to be somewhat of it. I mean, I think that's a we should say that to the people who say who want to outlaw.
There's 2 aspects of pain. One is the nerve sending the message to the spinal cord.
Right.
The spinal cord sends it to the brain. If the brain cannot interpret it as pain, that's why you have no memory of any pain you had as a child.
That's right.
No memory.
Right. Of course.
Because the brain is incapable of interpreting.
Right. You can't process what happened. Right. Exactly. So that's an important. So we should tell that the people who outlaw bris, who think that it's barbaric. Unfortunately, there are people like that.
Yeah, they want the baby to sign consent now.
Right. So it's a very unfortunate reality. So I mean, you have medically we have a very good argument to say that it's not painful for the baby.
How a pediatrician takes blood from a baby, he cuts the heel of the baby with a knife because the baby has no interpretation of the pain.
Right.
So that's how they get blood. They can't get blood from the veins of a baby. So I guess you outlaw pediatricians from getting blood from
Right.
the baby.
Right.
It's just the same thing.
Right. It's an excellent point. So when people come to attack us and
That's
say
right.
that we can't do
Let's
circumcision,
defend
so
ourselves.
we have what to answer. So there's definitely a perceived pain, meaning the baby still cries when it happens. There's something there, right? It doesn't last. He doesn't remember the pain.
Baby cries on everything.
Right. Okay. You're right. But
It's not only pain, everything.
you're right. 100%. I agree with you. We won't focus on the pain. We should stay away from the pain. The purpose
Most
here.
of the time, it's the mother and father that's
Right,
crying.
exactly.
The baby's
So,
crying.
right, it's interesting. So Chazal actually say, it's very interesting. So obviously the pain, whatever pain there is, if you could, I don't know if you call it pain, I don't know, whatever it is, there is, Chazal did perceive something going on in the baby. The baby cries, I think. Chazal say the reason we don't say Shehecheyanu at the time of a bris is Sa'ara diyanuka, is because the baby is in pain. Or maybe the parents are in pain that something is happening to the child. So I'm not sure how to interpret that, but it could be. But either way, it's an unfortunate reality that people are contesting this mitzvah. I have we're on 10%. I hope we last. Be okay.
You want to switch phones?
I don't know if it'll work with the.
A charger?
Have a charger handy?
Yeah, charger. I don't have a charger.
There's an outlet over there if it's long enough.
A charger.
I have one downstairs.
All right, thank you. We'll wait for you. Thank you. But it's an unfortunate reality. I have a friend who is he's a rabbi he is in Oakland, and so the Bay Area of Oakland is the hotbed for these issues. So he has to deal with many people who just don't want any part of this. They're Jewish, but they don't feel it.
What's
This
his
is Rabbi Albert, Gershon Albert.
No guy out there. Shabalo. Chabad guy.
Yeah, I'm sure they know each other. But he has these conversations trying to convince people that it is important to. Thank you so much. Wow, that's a long one.
Good, we need a lot.
Thank you.
There's a plug right there.
Okay.
Plug
They
this
say
in.
in order to understand the miracle of Hanukkah, the cell phone battery is dying and then lasts for 8 days.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. We just might have to move the.
Okay. Thank you. We'll have to. It's okay. All right, we're good. Thank you. We'll have to change the. This is great. Okay. Okay, we are back. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. So this is an unfortunate reality that we have to deal with. Whether or not it is painful, I guess we would say that there's something, but nothing that lasts. Minimal. Right. Okay. So it's important. Definitely important to keep in mind when we are talking to people about the importance of becoming part of the covenant. I mean, other people will say, like, how could I? It should be the baby's choice, right? We need baby's consent. How could I? Or when the baby gets older and it's old enough to choose. When it's 13 years old, it's old enough to choose to put itself through that. But should we put our?
Actually, even wanted to wait to 18 because there was age of consent at that point.
Right.
And they wanted to choose at 18.
Right. So it's a very unfortunate reality. But this has been. I mean, even the Muslims, many of them circumcise at 13.
And that's why they're at war very often.
Right. What was that?
That's why they're at war all
Yeah.
Frankly,
They're really
I'd
angry.
rather have it at age 8 days than
Right.
13 years.
Definitely. Yeah. Not
I
definitely.
go for that.
Definitely not easy. Okay, and even for gay room, we're not talking about gay room now. Converts who decide to male converts who decide to become part of the covenant. So this is also part of becoming part of the covenant and having to go through that. So there is actually a discussion. Circumcision is actually, at least in New York, I think, is becoming more prevalent. I don't know what the exact numbers are. Maybe Dr. Biegelman, if you know. What percentage? I don't know. But it's very common for a convert to come and have already been circumcised. So what do you do in that situation?
Take a drop of blood.
Take a drop of blood, right? Exactly. So it's called hatafas dam bris. You take a drop of blood, and this too also, children in the hospital who many people elect to have circumcisions in the hospital. done by the nurse or the doctor, or whoever comes to do it. So is that a kosher bris if it's done before the 8th day? So it's not a kosher bris, but you wouldn't need to do a full cut again. You would just do hatafas dan bris. You would just take a little droplet of blood
How about if it's done by the urologist after the 8th day?
after the 8th day, meaning
Because many of the brisses of the Russian Jews were done by physicians
right.
rather than moles.
So after the 8th day, it's still a kosher bris. We say to do it on the 8th day, and if you don't do it on the 8th day, it's not a great thing. It could be that there's kares, the punishment of kares for every day that the bris is delayed. So that's a kares means being cut off. What that means is a discussion for a different time, but definitely not a positive thing. So a bris should be done right away. Even we do a bris right away in the morning. It should be done right away. Yeah.
Just a quick thing, it's interesting that the kares is the penalty, and anything that would be punishable by a kares is corrected with a chatas.
Right. Oh, interesting.
So it's an interesting connection. So.
Interesting. I never thought about it. Thank you.
It's correctable, Brian.
So what Brian is saying, we spoke earlier about the mother who brings a korban chatas, but she brings a korban chatas for a male or a female child. But that's interesting. So what Brian said was that any avera that carries kares with it, if you do it by accident, then you would bring a korban chatas. So Brian was noting the potential connection between a mother bringing a korban chatas and a bris having an obligation of kares, punishment of kares, if it is not done. Interesting. I don't know. It could be that there is a connection. I'm not sure. Excellent point. Thank you. Okay. So we get back to the meaning of 8. 8 is a big number in Judaism. What is the meaning of 8? 8 days of Hanukkah. 8 days of a bris milah. Do we have any other appearances of the number 8? Can anyone think of any? I'm not sure I can think of. Shavuos is after 7 weeks of counting Sfiras HaOmer, so that is sort of the 8th. It is above the day above the 7th. 8 days of right. So in America, so Pesach is really 7, but there are 8 days of Sukkot. Right. There are 8 days Shmini Atzeres. Right. There are 8 days of Sukkot even in Israel. Okay, so what is the significance of the number 8? So how many days did it take for God to create the world? 7. 6, and he rested on the 7th. So there's a whole concept of numerology, the importance of numbers in Judaism. So the number 7 is the number that is often associated with creation, with nature. And we'll find the number 7 all over. As we said, 7 days of creation, so we have 7 days in a week. And there are 7 notes on a musical scale, and there are 7 colors in a prism of a rainbow. So the number 7 is a number that relates very much to the natural, complete world. And so the number 8 is the number above 7. 8 is the supernatural. And so what we are signifying is that yes, we are part of this natural world, but the bris becoming part of the Jewish people, there's something supernatural about it. There's this connection to God that we can't explain, but it is related very much to the supernatural. So Hanukkah, the miracle of Hanukkah, which no one could explain how the candles lasted for longer than the amount of oil that they had. So that is supernatural. So that is why Hanukkah is 8 days. There are discussions about why 8 days specifically, but one understanding is this signifies the supernatural, the Torah, after the 7 whole weeks, the 7 weeks of Shavuos. Torah is supernatural. It is above nature, above time. Not something we can comprehend, but it is related to the supernatural. Okay, so that is a little bit about the number 8. I think some of the points that I wrote here, these were actually supposed to be by the Shalom Zachar. Okay. The Rambam actually says that the reason the 8th day is important is because is a very practical reason. The Rambam says that a baby is simply too weak to to undergo a circumcision. Maybe that was the common medical knowledge at the time, or perhaps this is related to the fact that he, as we said before, if you have 8 days, so you're guaranteed to meet a Shabbos in between, and so perhaps the Rambam felt that the kedusha of Shabbos, the holiness of Shabbos, is what gives a person strength to undergo such a procedure. So that is a little bit about the number 8. Okay. What about girls? We'll get there now. What about girls? So are girls not part of the covenant? No. Chas v'shalom.
Why babies can't be there without the mother.
So what about girls? So the Gemara actually discusses this. The Gemara says it's actually important before we get here. It is also important to realize that the place in which the bris milah occurs, the male organ specifically. So that is there is a lot of discussion of why that area specifically. So that area is an area that relates to man's natural urges, man's natural desires, and so the purpose of cutting off a piece of that area specifically is signifying that one is supposed to take your natural desires. This is where it is most potent, but all of your natural desires, natural instincts, and sanctify that towards God. That we don't say that there's no place for pleasure, for worldly pleasures between husband and wife and so forth. But there's a time and a place, and that can all be done within the context of godliness, within the context of the covenant. So with that, we'll get to what about girls? So do girls, they don't have this mitzvah of milah. So why not? So if you look at the Gemara, this is the Gemara in Maseches Avodah Zarah. Who can one of our ladies please read this for us? This is source number 11 on page number 5.
A woman is considered as if she is circumcised.
Okay, so what does that mean? What does that mean? So it's not that women don't have a part of this. It's that women very much have a part of this.
Women are complete already.
Right.
Already.
Women are
Perfect.
right.
Perfect.
So
Every way.
very good. So while men may need a physical reminder, while men may need a procedure, you could take the call. We have 5 people listening in.
Might as well put it on speakerphone at this point.
Dave, I'll have to call you back later. I'm at a meeting.
Okay.
Now that the girls are laughing.
Okay, continuing with our meeting. Great. So it is not that females don't have a part of this. Is that men are insufficient. Is that men need the physical reminder. Men need to go through the procedure. Men need that extra push. But women are wholesome. We have a lot to learn from our wives, from the females around us. So that is what the Gemara says. Why females do not need this circumcision. And Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen says in source number 12. Could one of our ladies?
And similarly, about the daughters of Israel, the sages wrote that, quote, a woman is considered as if she is circumcised, unquote, for even her flesh is considered holy.
So she is already on this level. Well, we need to get back to the level of Adam HaRishon. We need to we need to get back to that Tzelem Elokim. Women are already on that level and do not need that. And
Are we
there's
sure that
And
Rabbi
yet-
Tzadok's wife?
maybe that was hijacked.
And yet,
Hijacked, by the way.
men, because they aspire to this holiness, through the millennia, men have constantly tried to dominate women,
Right.
trying to get even or to go beyond that. But that's a political
Right,
statement.
definitely. So it has no place here because that's not clearly. Chazal had a very lofty view of the woman and the importance of the woman, and so that is what Chazal say. And there's a beautiful quote about women don't wear a yarmulke. Why not? So, could we? Does anyone want to read the next? The next?
Okay, I'll read.
Okay.
Look, number 13.
Yeah, number 13. Esther
Yes.
Kasavsky.
Okay, yes, women are viewed differently. Men wear a yarmulke on their head, a constant reminder of God's presence. The Yiddish word yarmulke means fear of heaven or fear of the king. Women don't have to wear one because women have a natural understanding. Similarly, circumcision is a physical sign of a bond between man and God. Women don't need a physical reminder that God expects certain things from them because they are born with a spiritual sensitivity. These explanations come from the Talmud. They weren't just thought up to counteract modern society.
So these ideas go way back, as we saw. These are rooted in the Talmud. There's just understanding for us men the importance of our female counterparts, who are the epicenters of our home. They are the spiritual guides of our home. So we thank you, women, for creating our beautiful Jewish homes. And as we approach Hanukkah, so Hanukkah, the lights emanate from the home. One of the Amoraim actually said he always called Ishti, he always called his wife Basi. I always called my wife my house. Why? Because not that she
He was a comedian.
he was a comedian
that said that.
in my home,
And she sat
but
around
what he meant was that the home is rooted in the woman. The woman is the one who has that extra spiritual sensitivity. Chazal say she has a bina yetera. She has extra sensitivity, extra understanding of the divine, and she is the one who imparts that into her children, into the home. So that is a little bit about bris milah. And just to conclude with some of the halachos, so milah is on the 8th day, generally. We discussed the 3 steps to milah. Milah priya, removing the membrane, and the metitza, the sucking. Most mohalim nowadays will use a straw for the sucking of the blood. There are some, a milah can, most often, if the baby is born on Shabbos, 8 days later will be a Shabbos, and even though it is a melacha to draw blood, to cut, milah overrides Shabbos, unless there are situations where we will not have a milah on Shabbos. So some of those are, if Yom Kippur, we can have a milah on Yom Kippur.
On Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
Section, baby.
Right. Very good. A C-section
There was-
baby.
There was no food.
Right. No
It
food.
was just, it was on Yom Kippur.
Right. So you could have a milah on Yom Kippur. So if it was any natural birth will override Shabbos. So much so, there's actually in the Gemara, there's a whole perek in Masechta Shabbos that any preparation, no matter what malacha is violated, that is needed for the milah can be done. Meaning, if there's no eruv and you need to get the knife, you're allowed to carry the knife in a public domain. But we don't paskin like that. But it's just there is this concept that milah overrides Shabbos.
If it wasn't a natural birth, you
Right.
couldn't have
So
it on a Shabbos.
Exactly. So if it wasn't a natural birth, if it was a C-section,
Uh-huh.
so then it would not override Shabbos. Then it would be immediately after Shabbos. It would have to be on Sunday.
What was the thing about the morning? You said, I know it's supposed to be in the
That
morning.
it's
So why is that? So there's this concept that we learned from Avram Avinu. We have a general concept in mitzvos. There's reason makdimin mitzvos that mitzvos are supposed to be done hastily. They're supposed to be done as early as possible. And it seems there's a specific mitzvah with there's a specific aspect within milah to be done early in the morning, to show our haste, our
Rush to do it.
our rush to do the mitzvah. But specifically here, when we are entering within the covenant, I actually spoke about this at my son's bris. Moshe Aryeh, I spoke at his bris, and I said this concept of when Bnei Yisrael, when the Jewish people left Egypt, so they left, Chazal say, b'chipazon, they left also hastily. So why? What is the significance of that? So the understanding is that as we said, the Jewish people are above time. When we enter into this covenant, we are not bound by time. So that is why when we became a nation, we left in haste. meaning we are not bound by the rules of time. So here too, by Mila, so when we enter the covenant of the Jewish people, we are showing we do it quickly, do it fast. So we're not also a matzah. A matzah has to you're not supposed to let it rise. I mean, don't let it become bound to time. So when we enter the covenant, so we're showing we're becoming part of this greater people, this number 8 above nature, above time. So perhaps that is why we do it specifically in the morning. Interestingly, in Israel, so many people do it in the afternoon. There's a whole discussion. If you're going to have more people there in the afternoon, it'll be more convenient for people should you delay it to the afternoon. But in general, we try to have it as early in the morning as possible at a reasonable hour. So we said a Shabbos bris will take place for a natural birth, not for a C-section. The poskim actually discuss what about babies who were conceived through IVF. So that is also, the baby was not, there's a natural birth, but the baby was not conceived in a natural way. So interestingly, most of the poskim say that such a baby should not have a bris on Shabbos. It could be a little bit uncomfortable for couples who are going through that. Try to explain why their baby is not having a baby on Shabbos. Always important to be sensitive in those situations. But
They don't want the whole world to know.
right. So it is. There are some poskim who do say, Rav Asher Weiss specifically, and he says that even an IVF baby can have a bris on Shabbos. Other times where we will not override Shabbos is if the baby is born Friday night in twilight, meaning between sunset and complete sundown when the new day begins. So we have this time called Bein Hashmashos, where we're not sure if it's day or night. My nephew, I remember, he was born Friday night, and my mother-in-law was in the delivery room, and her job was to keep her eye on the clock. See when did the baby's head come out? What time was it born? You can't trust the birth certificates. They often don't write the correct time when the baby was born. So it's very important to know was the baby born on Shabbos or not, because you want to have the bris on the 8th day, and you don't want to have it after that.
What do you do if a baby's adopted?
Adopted, very good. So adopted from non-Jewish parents.
Both, either one.
Okay, so this is more of a Gerus question.
Mm-hmm.
So if the baby was adopted from Jewish parents, so they would get their bris on, if they were assuming they were healthy, they would get it on the 8th day. If they were adopted from non-Jewish parents, so they would probably be. Would they be more than 8 days old? I don't know.
So
depends, right? If they came from birth, so they can have a bris as part of their gerus. The truth is, I don't want to give a blanket answer. I'm not sure specifically. I know of a few cases who adopted children, but they weren't on the 8th day. So I'm not sure. I assume you could get it on the 8th day. It would have to be in conjunction. I mean, there's conversion there also.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure how that plays into it. I don't know. Let me look into it. I'll get back to you. Good question.
Yes,
Thank you.
also,
Yes.
just walked out of my mind. If a baby is ill, let's say the baby
Right.
is
Okay.
yellow,
So we'll get there. Right.
and you can't make it on the 8th day, does it need to be made exactly on, as soon as the
Right.
baby is well,
Very
or can
good.
you delay it to the
Okay.
Sunday, let's say?
So
My son was born and was underweight and was whatever, and it was 2 weeks later.
Right.
Because
So-
he was premature, and they said he had to be at a certain birth weight.
Right.
So it wasn't the day, he had to get to that weight
Right.
Yes, but
in
let's
order
say
to do it.
the doctor says, okay, today he's ready to have his bris. You need to
Right.
make it on that day.
So the answer is
or-
it depends. So if it's something like jaundice, which is very common, the bilirubin count is too low. So too high. Sorry. Thank you, doctor. Okay. Sorry, I'm not an expert, so you know better than me. But
It's a good thing you came tonight.
thank you.
And I just started.
Thank you. Please, all comments are always welcome. So if he is jaundiced, so he won't have it on the 8th day, and as soon as the doctor says he is healthy, then he can have the bris. However, if there is more of a major danger, infection or something like that, the baby is in the ICU. So then the halacha is that you wait 7 days from the time the doctor says the baby is healthy. So he won't get the bris right away.
So you don't have that opportunity to choose the day.
Right, you don't choose, except it can't be on, once the bris is delayed, then also it will not be on Shabbos. Only an 8th-day bris can be on Shabbos. If it is delayed, if 7 days after the doctor says the baby is healthy, after he comes out of the ICU, if that is Shabbos, so he can't get a bris on Shabbos. It'll wait till Sunday. So that is the halacha of an unhealthy baby. Okay, I think that was about all I wanted. Yeah.
My son was, I had a C-section, and my mother-in-law was a Holocaust survivor, and like, you have to have a opinion event in 30 days. And we said, I don't know how we knew. Someone said, no, you can't.
Oh, for a C-section.
Because it was a C-section. Right. And she had to like call these rabbis, and they said, no, you can't. It's not, because it wasn't a natural.
Right, it wasn't a natural birth.
It wasn't a natural birth.
For Pidyon Haben, you need a natural.
A natural birth.
Right.
So it's interesting, my youngest son, who was born, I had moved to Atlantic Beach several years before, his bris was on Tisha B'Av. And Rabbi Roth was, in charge of it all. And what happened was everyone assembled at my home. I lived diagonally across from the shul. And whoever wanted to went to shul for mincha, came back to the house, and we had the bris then. So it was already afternoon. And then we had eaters and non-eaters, afterwards. So it was kind of, kind of cool.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Anyone have questions about bris milah? So there are other questions. What about
I have a question. I know there is a debate about these clamps that sometimes.
Right. Okay. Very good.
Can you tell us about
Sure.
that?
So this is thank you for the question. Great question. So clamps. So the purpose of a clamp would be to eliminate any blood from the procedure. So it seems that a very integral part of the bris is the dam, is the blood that comes out from the bris milah. So clamps are not recommended for a halachic bris. Dam is very much, we say, mitbosesech b'damayich. There are two of the mitzvahs that are related to blood are the Karban Pesach and the Bris Milah. These are two of the times where Bnei Yisrael gave of themselves to signifying their covenant with God. The Karban Pesach also, when they were leaving Egypt, that was when we were entering into becoming that nation. So blood is very. They pasted the blood on the doorposts in Egypt. So blood is a very integral part of the. I'll tell you an interesting. Blood is an integral part of the procedure. But what about a baby who is a hemophiliac? What do we say? Can a baby who is a hemophiliac have a bris milah? Dr. Riegelman?
I guess you better not.
Better not.
But
Okay.
Right now we have factor 9, and you can do it.
What's factor 9?
The missing factor that the hemophiliacs lack. You just give them the factor 9
Interesting.
and you can do all the surgery you want.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's a great solution.
So factor 9 is not like WD-40.
Like spray some oil.
If you had 2 babies that bled to death, you wouldn't do it on the third.
Right. So the halacha. So Chazal were aware of this phenomenon. They weren't able to do genetic testing beforehand or to see if anything would be wrong. But they said if a mother gives birth to 2 babies who died because of bris milah, so the halacha is don't do it on the third. So technically the baby is patur from, he is not obligated in this mitzvah. We say it's okay. It's okay. He's not obligated in this mitzvah. However, the question is really more relevant to what about a ger, someone who is a ger, so an integral part of the gerus. This is beyond our shir here, but milah is an integral part of becoming a convert. So is a ger who is a hemophiliac allowed to become a ger? Can he become part of the Jewish people? So with factor 9, so that sounds great. So as we said, blood is an integral part of the of the Mila, so maybe not. Others say that no, just like a baby who's just not obligated in this mitzvah, so to a ger, he can't do it. So okay, he'll go into the mikvah, he'll accept upon himself the mitzvahs, but he just can't do Mila. Others say no, that he just too bad. Like, I'm sorry, but Mila is an integral part of the gerus, and we're sorry. You could do everything else, but you just can't actually become a Jew. There is a discussion. What about laparoscopic procedures? Using a laser to perform the Mila. So I'm not familiar with the procedure, but apparently that's possible.
Laparoscopic means that you entered the abdominal
So-
cavity, so that doesn't apply.
So
to bris
what are you, a
milah.
laser? What do you call a procedure using a laser? Laser. Okay.
But not
Using.
laparoscopic.
Okay. Fine. Thank you for correcting. It's good we have a doctor here. I am not an expert in these areas. So using a laser. So so you asked about a clamp, but what is there a specific thing that needs to be used for a Mila? So the halacha is that a Mila could be used with anything.
In a sharp stone.
Right.
Why don't we go back to that?
Right. So it could be used exactly. So it could be used with a stone. It could be metal. Right. So
Correct.
there's no blood with laser. So that's a discussion. So if they are able to, Rav Asher Weiss discusses this in a tshuva. So he says that it could be that there is a little drop of blood with a laser. I don't know if that's true. You can make it happen. So in that situation, so then that would be enough. Even a little tiny drop of blood would be enough to make a kosher bris milah, but there needs to be a little blood involved, and that is what he says about laser. Thank you. Good to have doctors around. Appreciate it.
I just wanted to bring up something. I know everybody's appalled by the fact that religious people suck the blood.
Right.
But there's been studies done to show that when that happened, it provided antibodies to the baby to prevent infection. In the days when there was no sterilization of instruments, this is how babies survived the bris milah, because their immune system was too primitive to combat infection. But the transfer of antibodies from the moel to the wound actually
Helped.
promoted healing of the wound.
Interesting. Wow.
How about
But
transmission?
nowadays,
Of
because it's
herpes.
not-
How about herpes and hepatitis?
well, no, but you see, now it's not necessary because we have antibiotics if the baby gets an infection. So now it should be prohibited because of the transmission of possible herpes to the baby, which it could be fatal to the baby. So it should be prohibited now. But in the olden days, that's how they prevented infections.
Great. Thank you. So that's what Chazal say. And there are many who assume that it was purely because the reason for sucking is because of a health, as part of a health concern to prevent infection.
But not now.
Right. So nowadays, so it's not necessary. So in order to worry about those who say that this is part of the mitzvah, so we still do it, but we don't do it directly with the mouth. So we'll use straw or gauze or whatever, or gauze. I don't know what's. They just won't make direct contact with the baby. But yeah, that's what we do. That's what should be.
But Steve is absolutely correct, because now if you have herpes on your mouth,
Right. So it
babies
could
will
be
die from your
exactly
herpes.
right.
So you can't do it by mouth.
Or hepatitis.
Right.
It should
So
be
that's
prohibited as before.
is even with the if you do it with the straw is to eliminate that danger, right?
Well, you're not touching the baby's skin, so
Right.
there's no way your herpes is going to get to the
Right.
baby.
So that's why many recommend it being done with the straw. That's what should be done. There are people who are opposed, but I think that's been accepted. That's what's been accepted in our
Except
communities.
among the Hasidim.
Right. There are some. I mean, there's a lot of research on this. There are some who say that these findings are false and there's not really infection. I don't know, but the people that I speak to, the Rebbeim, that I speak to, say that we should use a straw. Sounds much safer. Really glad.
I'm sure it does.
We could ask him,
Everybody.
but yeah, infectious disease
I have a
specialist.
cousin
Yeah.
who's an infectious disease type. He's very against.
Right. Yeah. So it makes sense. Yeah. Better safe than sorry. We take human life very seriously. We don't want to put anyone in danger. And with that, so importance of Mila. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Rabbi.
I wish everyone
Please have dessert before you go home.
Can we discuss next week?
Thank you,
Oh,
Stephen.
next week.
You're very welcome.
We skip
Please have
topic?
dessert.